name suggests, the aim of this dialogue is to facilitate a conversation with leaders in policy space. And of course, the audience will be people from the academia, business, and our students primarily. We have with us, and we couldn't have had a better person than Shri Suresh Kumar with us for this wonderful start. Shri Kumar is an IAS officer from the 1983 batch, who is currently the Chief Principal Secretary to the Honorable Chief Minister of Punjab. In his over 33 years of distinguished service in the government as a member of the Indian Administrative Service, he's held multiple portfolios at the state of Punjab and as well as in Government of India. The last position that he held was as the Additional Chief Secretary Agriculture. He's an expert in agriculture and food. Post his retirement in 2017, when Captain Amrinder Singh became the Chief Minister of Punjab, his first appointment was to get Mr. Kumar as the Chief Principal Secretary to the CM, a position that he's in since then. In his current role, as you can imagine, being in this key position at the CM's office, he handles multiple portfolios, advises the Chief Minister, but more importantly, and in the specific context of the last 3-4 months that all of you, I'm sure you're sort of following this issue, is also someone who's credited with architecting the Punjab's response to the central farm bills and more. So he's here to talk with us on these issues. I'm very delighted and thankful to Professors Aditya Dar and Shekhar Tomar for agreeing to sort of engage Mr. Kumar in a conversation this evening. Both of them are professors in the economics and public policy area, all of you know, and I'm not going to get into their introductions. But I do want to sort of mention why, just a minute about why is it important for business leaders and business students to learn more about public policy. There are many reasons. This one thing that stands out for me is Professor Harbir Singh, who's the Vice Dean at Wharton. He and his co-authors a few years ago, almost about 10, 11 years ago, wrote a book called The India Way, where they sort of studied Indian leaders. They interviewed about 130 CEOs and found out what is it different in their leadership with other sort of leaders across the world. They found that Indian CEOs spend, sort of bulk of their time on two critical issues. One is on people management and two in managing the regulatory environment. And that is, that should tell you as students of business management that this is something as an area that you should invest in. Understanding policy will help you in your business decisions, gets you better prepared to take better decisions, to forecast, to be able to see things. But also in many sectors that you will probably enter or rather re-enter as students of ISB, highly regulated industries or sectors, you also will be making sure that you're not, deviating or, faulting on some of these things. And if not anything else, just talking to leaders in this space will just enrich your knowledge in very diverse areas. So with that little bit of a background, again, I want to thank all those of you who joined us here in Mohali and also virtually from all over the country. Thank you very much. And Aditya is in Washington, DC. So in some sense, we have an international audience to begin with itself. So Shekhar, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Guru. Thanks for the great introduction. We are really happy to have you, Mr. Kumar, and thanks for agreeing to have discussion on this very important topic. So what we are going to do is we are just going to set up the stage, although I think a lot of people who are already here, they have probably read in the news or followed the discussion around the new farm bills which were passed by the central government a few months ago. And so there has been a lot of development on this front, especially since the COVID time period, and there had been a lot of focus on the entire food supply chain area itself, and specifically due to these farm bills. In terms of the recent farm bills that were put out by the central government, of course, there were three important aspects of it, and we are going to look at two of them. So the first one is allowing farmers to sell their produce within the state or outside the state. And although the name given to this amendment was kind of complicated, but essentially it related to doing away with the middlemen. So that's the first aspect of these new amendments. And the second aspect was primarily related to allowing contract farming within the space, which will probably open up more avenues for growth in the agricultural sector. So just to set up the stage, and this is also probably the interesting aspect about policy making in India, is that we have a lot of states, and probably the way they approach these questions and these problems is slightly different by how the center views it. And so we are very fortunate today to listen from Mr. Kumar, who is heading this, spearheading the effort in distinguishing themselves from the center government. And so I'll directly pose a question about the first aspect of it, which is related to the middlemen. So one of the major reasons cited by the center was related to the middlemen, that they want to remove the discretionary powers of the middlemen or the RPs in the agricultural market. And the idea was that removing these middlemen is going to allow to pass more benefits to the farmers. Now, this is a very complicated issue, and some of the people have already discussed about it, in the sense that, and I'm just giving one example of it, maybe middlemen are providing very important information or a service to the market. And so in that sense, maybe they are playing an important role. And to bring you in, sir, can you elaborate what do you think about the structure of middlemen in Punjab? How is it different from the rest of the country? And how are you thinking about this problem going forward?
Thank you, Shekhar. Thank you. I don't think we'll straight away jump onto the question of middlemen. Now, the question of middleman is important because the government of India is time and again emphasizing that these laws, all three laws, are aimed at kind of removal of intermediaries, middlemen, or so-called artiyas, we call them, or commission agents, we call them in Punjab. If you have to take up that question first, I'll ask you a counter question. Is there any trading in this country that happens without a middleman? Give me one example. Give me one example, whether it is defense matters, whether it is financial markets, whether it is trading in any other place. There are always people to facilitate between the producers and the buyers. Very few examples in the world all over you will find where a producer is directly selling to the consumer or consumer is directly buying from the seller. That doesn't happen. Now the commission agents or the intermediaries or artiyas in Punjab, they are basically licensed commission agents. They are paid commission, they are paid service charge because they are providing some services. Services not only to the government, because government pays it, they are cleaning the crop, they are doing some water arrangement, they are maintaining the mandis, they are maintaining the record, they are maintaining all those J form, M form, all the records, the transaction records we keep in the APMC markets. All that is statutory. They are monitored statutorily. Every penny paid to them is recorded. The only difference, the only thing which is probably hurting the government of India is that the money, the 2.5% of the crop value which they get as service charge, you may call it market development fee, or you can call it rural development fee, or whatever the commission of the intermediaries. The fact is that this is paid by the buyer. The law, the APMC Act and the Rural Development Act of Punjab provide for payment of these service charges, or for that matter any other tax. Initially, now the purchase tax has been subsumed in the GST. 5% purchase tax also on the food grain was paid by the buyer. Now in this case, because most of the procurement or purchase of the food grain is 30 million tons of food grains are bought by FCI, that happens to be a government of India agency. So the government of India pays the tax, or the service charge, or the fee assessed for providing services. Now, if the law of the land is that there has to be no tax on farmers, farmers do not pay any indirect taxes they do pay in the market, all those sales tax earlier, VAT thereafter, and now GST, that in any case farmer, for that matter any consumer, pays in this country. But there is no other tax on the farmers. They don't pay any income tax, they don't pay any import or export fee, nothing of the sort is levied on the farmer. When the law of the land is that not to put any tax burden on the farmers or on the producers of the food grains or the agriculture crops or horticulture crops, in that situation, the state governments, to raise some revenue for rural development, for building, marketing, infrastructure, have no other option. The only choice we had to levy taxes and service charges on the buyers. So if buyer is buying 2,000 rupees a quintal or 20,000 rupees a ton, so another 2.5%, 3% they have to pay the service charge. So what is so wrong about it? Are we not paying to in the financial market? Is the SEBI not allowing the commission agents buying all the shareholdings, all the transactions in the financial markets? I had asked Government of India, my colleagues in Government of India, who happens to be the Agriculture Secretary, happens to be 3-4 years younger to me. I asked him to give me one example where the trading in India happens without any service charge. Not only in India. If Aditya is sitting in Washington or somewhere else or in US, please find out if there is any trading which happens without. I go to California for good reasons because all 3 kids are in California, and when we go there, all commercial trading in the agriculture produce, whether it is food grains or other cash crops, everything is through some agencies. Now today, if you eliminate these commission agents and bring in what we call is the as a competitive area is what the new laws are calling is a trade area. So trade area versus APMC Act. So APMC Act will have the commission agents and the trade area will have the employees or the agents of the big business houses. Maybe so let's have Reliance Fresh. So is that Ambani or Adani are going to come and buy here? Is the Tata Birlas are going to come and buy in the small little markets of quinoas or the seed potatoes or the cotton and the very many other things which are exported from Punjab? That's not correct. It's only these commission agents will be replaced by the employees or the agents of big buyers. Of course, the big buyers are required. Bulk purchase is required. In this case, food grains bulk purchase is done by the FCI, and they are facilitated by a set of 10,000 licensees who are paid service charge or so-called commission. As per law, we call it APMC Act, we call it commission. But everything they do, A to Z, recording of transactions, maintenance of records, everything is done on every 6 months or every half-yearly crops or the summer and winter crops. No, it will also be incorrect to say that APMC markets are non-transparent. I disagree with that. Somebody I heard the CEO of Niti Yog wrote, and yesterday we were together in IIM Rohtak, where some of those who have drafted these legislation or who are kind of considered to be architects of these legislations claim that APMC is encouraging these markets, regulated markets are encouraging monopolies. I would like to know in which market of Punjab there is a monopoly. Except the bulk buyer is FCI. Who is creating monopolies? Government is the buyer, and there are 10.5 lakh farmers who are the producers. So where is the monopoly? Neither the producers are in a situation of a monopoly, nor the buyers are very many bulk buyers. Government needs, and mind you, this procurement which happens, the buying which happens, not that it is a statutory obligation of the Government of India to buy under the National Food Security Act. There are some students here, they can very well read section 22, subsection 4 of the National Food Security Act. It is said the Government of India shall procure food grains. And then the targets for these procurements are given by Government of India. Buying is done by the Ministry of Food, and the targets for the production, both how much area should go in paddy, how much area should go in wheat, how much area should go in cotton. These are all winter and summer crops targets are given by the Government of India. As Agriculture Secretary of the state, I've been attending meetings and these targets are decided right up to the level of Union Agriculture Minister. So where is the question of state not doing what they are asked to do and Government of India not going by the commitments it had made to the farmers? They've been doing it for last 6 decades. And why suddenly to withdraw? And why suddenly create a alternative which is totally unregulated trade area versus a regulated APMC? I don't see any benefit of totally unregulated tax-free buying for the buyers. Whereas the law of the land so far at the convention has been keep the farmers out of tax net. Now today you are keeping the big buyers, big corporates also out of the tax net. So buyers are not going to give the tax, the producers are not going to give the tax, the consumers, you and me, are going to pay the tax, all taxes, direct or indirect. So how are the states going to run? How much taxes can you put on the consumers? I mean, this is a different question. Once we have other questions, I can clarify how these are not subsidies to the farmers. Yeah, please.
So let me ask another related question to it. So this is primarily not coming from the intermediary part, or the middleman part is probably not that important, in the sense that you're saying it's going to be replaced by some other big corporate player. So in the end, there is going to be someone in the middle at the end of the day. But there has been a very big difference in the response in some of the big paddy procurement states, Telangana and Andhra, I would say, relative to Punjab and Haryana. Now, the farmers agitating on the streets, they are not there because of the middlemen. They themselves are seeing some difference about these laws, which their counterparts in other states are not seeing through. So what is that important difference? Why are the farmers in Punjab out on the streets agitating? They are definitely not agitating to protect these middlemen. Probably.
Shekhar, let me tell you my counter question, what makes you believe the farmers in other states are not agitating? I would say the farmers are either holding back or they are not being allowed to agitate. Our neighboring states is equally badly affected. So is the Western UP. So is Bihar. The experience of Bihar in abolishing.
Bihar doesn't have a APMC for a while now. So Bihar is out of the question here, I would say.
That's why. No, my question is, when in Bihar, the government abolished the APMC, what difference it did make? Have the farmers really gained out of that? Have farmers really become richer in Bihar? Have more people gone to Bihar to make investment in agri infrastructure or agri processing? Nothing of the sort has happened. So why blame APMC then?
No,
the governance per se, the issue is largely the governance issue, not the APMC or the new laws. We need to improve the quality of governance, quality of administration. We need to see that every transaction is done transparently in an environment which benefits the producer. Producer gets a remunerative value, whether you do it in Bihar or whether you do it in Punjab. Even today, the value which is offered, you and me, because of comparing it with Telangana, Andhra and Bihar, we may think that Punjab farmers are better off. Yes, truly they are better off. Because it's not because the market pays them more. The fact is that everything you do co-op farming in Punjab, Haryana and Western UP, 2.5 original Green Revolution state, everything is low risk agriculture. It is fully assured agriculture, assured marketing. Why was that done? Some of you as students have to go and read the history and geography of Green Revolution. It took us 75 years to evolve our agriculture policy, our food systems. And these systems have proved resilient in the worst crisis. I'm almost 65 now. At the age of 65, the kind of crisis we have seen in last 6-7 months, the COVID crisis, if there has been anything more resilient, more responsive, the strength of this nation has been our food systems, had been our food policy, successful agriculture policy. 800 million people have been fed for 6 months free of cost. Where did that stock come from? And I have no hesitation to say this is because of proud farmers, hardworking, dynamic farmers of Punjab, Haryana and UP, Western UP. 45 million tons of food grains are bought every year from these 2.5 states, which constitute about 6% of the total farmers. 95% farmers had the freedom of choice. Even in these 6% areas, the farmers had full freedom of choice. Tell me, I don't know who said this, that the farmers cannot sell their paddy, whether it is common paddy or the long grain aroma rice or basmati, or for that matter any other crop, to any other state. This is again a misnomer. You find quinoas of Punjab selling in Bangalore. You find quinoas of Punjab selling in Bengal. You find seed potatoes of Punjab selling in whole of the northeast and eastern India. You find the mandis of Delhi full of all the vegetables and other things going from Punjab. Even without the new legislation, The farmers have a choice to take their crop. They want to withhold, they can withhold. They want to sell it, they can sell it. They can sell it to the local market. They must do it if they want to. They want to take it to any other distant markets. Nobody stops them. There is no legal bar on them, even without the new legislation. The fact is, 86.2%, 86.5% farmers are less than 5 acres. They don't have holding capacity. They live crop to crop. They live crop to crop. They earn, they carry on their socio-economic obligations, and then they try and borrow their working capital, prepare for the next crop, then they earn a little bit, pay up some of the old debt and dues, and then go further. This is the one. So agriculture is local, subsistence, small, and it is still. Government of India may say it contributes 17% of the national GDP. Yes. But more than 50% population is still dependent. Even in Punjab, and now I can tell you, give you some bit of information. If you go by the ownership holdings, we have 18.5 lakh ownership holding. There are about 18,58,000 landowners who are agriculture landowners. If you go by operational holdings, cultivating holdings, there are about 10.5. 1/3 farmers, landowners are absentee landlords. They lease out their land to small little people. Like I have 2 acres, 5 acres. I lease in land from 5-10 people. And in all, I'm cultivating 15-20 acres. That's what gives me some subsistence. So there is already a leasing system. There is already a system of contract farming. And this all is happening without any central intervention. And why no central intervention today? Because if you read, there are 15 entries in the Constitution. The union list, list 1, state list, list 2, and the concurrent list, list 3. If you read, there are 15 entries which deal with agriculture and trade. The sum and substance, the pith and substance of all these entries is agriculture is a state subject. How is it that after 70 years or 75 years, you realize that, okay, Central has to do a legislation? Does it mean, please? Does it mean the earlier government did not know it? Everybody knew it. The states knew it, the center knew it. You and me knew it. Why did we suddenly realize that we have to intervene? When everything can be done, can happen without any central intervention. Is Reliance Fresh not buying from Punjab? Is Mahindra's not buying, Mahindra Fruits not buying from Punjab? Is ITC not buying from Punjab? Is other big players in the food not buying from Punjab? They are all buying. But there is some bit of thought which we need to give. COVID crisis has proved that the markets of essential commodities has to go on unabated. It will always be required to be maintained, uninterrupted, without disruptions, and there is always big margins. What COVID experience is, I can share with you, because not only that, since 5th June, we've been handling farmers' agitation, and today, now another 20 minutes from now, the first passenger train will start. First passenger train will start after 3 months. And the goods train, of course, first goods train has left Delhi for Amritsar and Jammu at 1 o'clock today. So we've been able to manage this. But during COVID times, the learning is that all other businesses suffered. We suffered a huge loss. In Punjab, we lost over 1 lakh crore of turnover for the business. There were no raw materials, there was no production, there was no demand, there were no workers. The whole industry, although 260,000 units we have small and big units we have. 99% were shut, except those who are dealing in essential items like both health systems, health requirement, masks, PP kits, thermometers, this, that, and drugs. They were only working. Are those who are dealing in trading in food items, particularly the essential food items. Not even fruits and vegetables. Only food grains, only milk. People who are buying to the minimum and stocking the food grains. Now, the big ones have now realized that for their survival in a crisis like this, they must have one window open in essential commodities. Be that the health commodities, health trading in health systems and health they should have investment in health infrastructure, hospitals, and the health equipment and health materials, healthcare materials, drugs, including drugs. On the other side are all this food, rice, wheat, edible oils, even in fruits. And the crisis was in the COVID, while the producer was suffering because they had huge stocks, they could not sell it. Buyer was suffering One, because there was no purchasing power, incomes and the jobs had gone. And two, wherever there was some income available, not enough stocks were reaching them. So prices were high. So the buyer was suffering, the consumer was suffering, the producer was suffering. That was the crisis. Now, in that situation, you need to encourage your supply chains. You need to really re-energize your supply chain. You need to have more stable, more consistent supply chains which can withstand all the pressure. But I'll still hold and I'll give all credit to the food systems and to the small little farmers we have in this area or anywhere in the country. They proved their resilience, they proved their strength, and the only happy thing is yes, people died. Over 130,000 people have died. They have died because of the health reasons. They have died because of the crisis and disease. But not one person has died because of hunger and deprivation. That's the strength of the country.
I think you have made like very important points on the resilience of the food chains. And I mean, we definitely know that the procurement during the COVID time period was phenomenal or exceptional. I mean, in any other country, it would have been much more troublesome relative to how painstakingly both Punjab and Haryana did it. I mean, and that was like right after the first lockdown. And you have given us a lot of material to think about. So, of course, I'm going to try to unpack a few of them and again go back to my initial question. So the first question or the first point that you raised was really about the subsistence level agriculture, which I think is probably something which should be looked at and which is really the macro level question we should be asking as more people transition out of agriculture, so on and so forth. I'm holding back on the contract farming just for a little bit, but I'll again go back to the initial question and just remove the comparison part with Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. And so I'll ask you like directly, what is the reason that farmers in Punjab are feeling that is bringing them onto the streets? What is the main grievance that they have against this central law?
See, there's a clear apprehension. There's quite a bit of anxiety amongst the farmers. Since some bit of these laws, the more we read, the more we get that impression about these laws is they're based on the Shanta Kumar committee recommendations. Some of the provisions of the laws, new laws, are also based on the recommendation with Mr. Modi when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat in 2010-11 and under the Dr. Manmohan Singh as Prime Minister. And there was a Chief Minister's group to make some recommendations on how do we strengthen our make our food systems and food delivery system, our PDS system more strong. Now, Mr. Modi, if you read, he's made about 68, 69 recommendations. Of course, you can't find them now. I have one of the copy of that report. This report, till about 8th or 10th June, this report was available on the website of the Food Ministry. But these days, that has been removed from the ministry. Because if you read those 68 recommendations, Mr. Modi's committee, it was a group of Chief Minister, not Mr. Modi alone. He was heading that group. And group was constituted by the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. In that group, he had given 68 recommendations. And the recommendation 10 or 11 clearly states MSP has to continue. Somehow these laws have created an apprehension and given an impression that MSP is going to be withdrawn. I don't know whether it can be withdrawn. It cannot be withdrawn to best of my understanding. One, because the commitment of Government of India to procure food grains for 800 to 900 million people every year, that kind of a commitment is there. So they have to procure food grains somewhere, and it's easily done. It's very easily managed and procured and stored because we have marketing capacity, marketing infrastructure. We have created warehousing capacity. We have created the systems of buying and storing and then transportation. All that system has evolved over the last 50, 60 years. So I don't think they can. Second thing is the law doesn't specify the price. The price at which the MSP is recommended by the Cost and Prices Commission, the Agriculture Cost and CACP. CACP is under the Ministry of Agriculture while the procurement is handled by the Ministry of Food. Now CACP makes the recommendation. Now since the CACP recommendations do not have any statutory sanction, no statutory backing, now for every other trading you have given the 3 comprehensive laws. And let me mention this for a particular institute like this, and as teachers in economics or students in public policy, the laws are very well drafted. There should not be any reason to quarrel. The more I read about the laws, in fact, I feel very happy that somehow the government has come out with the laws which are for the first time are different than the run-of-mill legislations we've been drafting in the government. Of course, there is a drawback. There is a drawback when you do a legislation under the concurrent list on a subject which is largely state subject. You need to concede some space to the states. You read the Food Security Act, rules are made by the states. You read the Land Acquisition Act, rules are made by the state. You read the CRPC, the Criminal Procedure Code, there are some powers and rules are made by the states. Civil Procedure Code, it can be amended and the rules are made by, and I can tell you, when the 2013 Land Acquisition Act was done by Dr. Manmohan Singh government, Gujarat government did not agree with that. Gujarat government opposed that land acquisition law. Land is also a state subject. And 2015, after Mr. Modi became Prime Minister, 2015, Gujarat government proposed the similar kind of amendments to the central law, and Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, as the President of India, has consented to those amendments of the state. So under Article 254(2), President is competent to accede to the state's request. Gujarat is the example. Mr. Modi has got it done for Gujarat in 2015, signed by Mr. Pranab Mukherjee as president. So it's not that what we've done in Punjab is undone. The apprehensions of MSP-based procurement either being withdrawn or being reduced is what is causing anxiety among the farmers. Number two, I can understand MSP and this kind of a procurement, MSP is not always viable. Even the present way of agriculture operations in Punjab, Haryana and Western UP is not sustainable for a long time. There are issues of nutrition security, there are issues of crop diversity, there are issues of biodiversity, even issues of health standards of the common man. All this cancer, you see, not many of you would know, I don't know, Punjab doesn't have any major minerals. But in our water, we have aluminium, we have uranium, we have all kinds of heavy metals. They are going because we are not doing agriculture, we are actually mining the land. This kind of a mining operation to produce 30-40 million tons of food grains in a year is actually somewhere down the line you have to think of some reforms and some alternative. Thinking of alternatives is good, reforms are good, Punjab farmers is willing to change, farmers of northern India, these 2.5 states are changing, but there has to be a way of engaging with the farmers, way of creating alternatives for the farmers. Some alternatives have happened. Initially when Green Revolution started, the area under paddy used to be about 2.8 million hectares, or 28 lakh, about 70 plus. lakh hectares. There is about 10 million acres of land, 1 crore acre है, उसमें से 75% was about in paddy cultivation. Today it's come down. It's about 2 million now. 7-8 million hectares of land has been kind of taken out of paddy cultivation. It has gone to basmati cultivation. It's gone to cotton cultivation. It's gone to cane cultivation. It's gone to fruits and vegetables. It's gone to potato cultivation. In the maize cultivation in the Shivalik areas and what we call as Kandi areas or some mountainous areas of Punjab. So it's not that it's happening gradually, but the process is slow. So if Government of India was thinking of bringing in some marketing reforms which were required, I have no hesitation after 1947 and particularly after 1966, the only marketing reforms which happened was MSP based procurement. And those were targeted on the national food security. So you established a system of MSP based procurement, you achieve the food security, and what thereafter? Nothing. Today suddenly with that you have fully regulated and no regulated. Somewhere down the line there has to be some middle path, some engagement with the farmers, some consultation. Gradual process of reform should have been initiated. This knee-jerk reaction without involving the farmers, without involving the stakeholders and not even consulting the states has what caused anxiety. Ki Government of India somewhere down the line is kind of targeting to withdraw or stop MSP based procurement, which I can tell you will create a lot of problems. See, what happens is people from Bihar, UP and all may think, my batchmate who sits in Prime Ministers and he's advisor to the Prime Minister, he's from Bihar, he's Bihar cadre officer. He thinks Punjabi farmers are pampered. When I came to Punjab, I am also not from Punjab. When I came to Punjab, I also thought that way. We were all together in Delhi University that time. We also thought that way. But once you sit here, you will come to know what they have done, what we have achieved. You have pampered them because you needed, as against PL 480, you needed the country to become self-sufficient in food grains, and that's what Punjab, Haryana and Western UP have given you. If today you want to kind of withdraw, please give them an alternative option. They have achieved a livelihood. They have achieved a certain level of prosperity. They have achieved a certain level of remuneration and income. You can't stop them. You can't withdraw that income, stop that flow of money to them annual basis or income. You, as I keep repeating this all the time. I mean, Mr. Guru was there the other day when I was talking to some other students. See, if today you offer them a system which gives them 10%, 15% over and above what they have achieved so far. If today a farmer is getting 100 rupees a day, you offer them a system or a market where they get 110 rupees. If you offer them a system where they are not even sure of 100 and they get 80, 75, this is what happens, which is largely happened in Bihar. It happens in Punjab in the maize market. It happens sometimes in Basmati also. It happens when you open up completely. We intervene the market. The MSP only says, and this is what the logic of MSP is, if the market is going below the remunerative levels, the government intervenes in the market and stabilizes it. So market stabilization is the objective of MSP, not really the procurement. And suddenly there is an impression that we are withdrawing. That's why the farmers are worried. And what we have done in the Punjab amendments, which we have sought from Government of India, we have passed 3 amendments to the 3 different bills. We have said, okay, make MSP as a statutory right. Whether in the trade area or APMC market, no purchase will happen below the MSP, and anyone buying below that will be a punishable offense. This is all we have said. Now, when you are statutorily bound to buy, and when you have a commission, Agriculture Cost and Prices Commission, CSCP, which notifies the prices of 23 crops every year, what makes you not to mention? And they can very well, if the politics has to say, I'm not a politician, but as a student or a practitioner of public policy, you are buying it at a specified price, you are committed under the law to buy it, then why not say it that, okay, you will buy it at the specified price? And the price, that specification of price comes through a notification. So saying the 2 words specified price in the National Food Security Act, and you have to play politics, say it, Congress did not do it, we've done it. Because the NFSA Act was done by Congress, Dr. Manmohan Singh. So that act of Dr. Manmohan Singh does not specify a price. The present government can specify the price and assure the farmers. So this set of farmers, otherwise, suddenly 60 years you have used those farmers. You have used it to the benefit of the country. You know what farmers have missed it, and I'll give you the example. These 2.5 months trains were not running, and this is the loss of farmers and loss of Punjab. 40 lakh tons of rice was to go to eastern UP and Bihar, parboiled rice. Since the rice could not be transported, which is lying in our godowns, is FCI rice, the Government of India's rice, they had to bring in rice from Telangana and Bengal. And in that process, they have ended up incurring more cost, more subsidy than what if they would have transported it from Punjab. It's closer. It's cheaper to transport from here. The systems were there. You are incurring the warehousing cost. You are incurring incidentals here. You are paying to the staff and holding costs. And then you have brought it from all the way from Hyderabad and beyond, Guntur and all, to bring it to Patna, bring it to the Bihar, some parts of UP which are close to Haryana and Punjab. So you've incurred more cost. Of course, this is we told this argument, we gave this argument to the farmers, and they were very happy to see, because farmers think that they become heroes. Government of India should not have stopped trains. Why do I need to stop trains? आपने बैठना है बैठो, मैं गाड़ी चलाऊंगा, कैसे नहीं हटते हो? The governance. So quite a bit of issues are governance. I think the laws are good. Laws could have been better executed had they been with the participation of stakeholders, including state and farmers.
Okay, let me intervene a little bit here. Aditya, I'll just ask one more question before I throw the floor to you. And I'm sure a lot of our questions are already answered, in the sense that we wanted to ask you about crop rotation within Punjab and how the kind of effects it's having on the environment, so on and so forth. And I could actually relate to the point that you said about that there's a general apprehension within the farmers. And I can relate to it because I've come from Western UP, and the MSP for sugarcane hasn't gone up in the last 3-4 years. And so the general tendency among the farmers is they don't want to believe the center government on any of the issues right now because they have some past trajectory that they have seen, they have followed in terms of the farming regulation and the MSP. But it brings me to the last question, which I wanted to ask was about this contract farming. And now, of course, you said that there is no restriction even right now in terms of contract farming. And me being coming from a village, I know that, of course, there is leasing going on, but generally it's word of mouth and there are no formal contracts signed or things like those. So what do you think would allow a more larger, a higher level scale of contract farming, whether it's needed or not? And again, this is tied to the initial point that you made that a lot of our farmers are subsistence level and they probably need to move out of agriculture, not right now, but if we are planning in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that's where having a formal architecture where you can have big players engaging into contract farming, whether that is needed or not, where do we stand, and what are the new laws that you are passing in Punjab relative to that?
See, your last thing first is that new laws, amendments we have sought from the Punjab is that if at all contracts have to be signed, contracts cannot be signed at a price below than the MSP. So the person who wants to lease in land from the small or big farmers, they have to assure that whatever happens, whatever the way market behaves, minimum price paid to the farmers will be MSP. So MSP linked contracts is what we are encouraging. Other thing is that you yourself said what we call is market of faith. Last 6 decades, 1/3 of the total cultivated land is done on the leasing, on the thekas, chakotas, whatever differently called in different areas, Haryana, Punjab and UP. But that's a market of faith which has worked well. In any of those PEPSU tenancy laws and the Punjab Tenancy Act, all these laws, till today, out of if you have 18 lakh farmers, today I have only 270 cases. That is also as old as 20 years, 30 years old cases. There are no new disputes, no new cases coming up. The fact is that market of faith has worked well. And it is all word of mouth or individual or personal basis. Contracts are leasing into the known people. They don't want to go to unknown people or don't want to interact or deal with any unknown people. The apprehension, let me tell you, Punjab also has in the Punjab Contract Farming Act 2013, and it is under my signature. I think it was notified on the 17th of April 2013, and I was the Agriculture Production Commissioner that time. So we do have a law. And thereafter, after 2013, for 3 years plus, I was the Chief Settlement Commissioner. Not even single case of contract was registered with the Settlement Commissioner in Punjab. And till today, not even a single case is registered after this is 7 years of Punjab Contract Farming Act. Now, the new Contract Farming Act is a little shade improvement. See, the contract law which the Government of India has notified is only a contract to sell or purchase. It has nothing to do with land. Land is neither leased in nor leased out. The land remains with the owner. It remains with the possession of the farmer. Only thing is, whatever is grown as per the conditions of the lessee, and the lessee assures you to buy everything grown in that at a given price, contracted price. So there are 2 or 3 apprehensions of the farmers. One, this has been practiced. It has happened in the past. If the market goes down, the lessee or the big buyers through the contract farming who engage within the contract farming do not pay kind of the contracted price if it is higher than the market. If the market is higher, then they pay the contracted price. So the farmer's demand is that, okay, whatever happens, my floor level price has to be fixed. I shall get a minimum price. If the market is higher, I should get as per the market. If market is lower, they should suffer. Now, there are arguments to the contrary. Why should it happen one way? It has to be two-way traffic. So if contract is, you don't need a contract farming act. You have the Indian Contracts Act. You can do the normal contract, you agree to certain terms and conditions and be done with it. So you follow both the parties to the contract, follow the terms and conditions, and there is no need for any government or any facilitator to interpret or do something. That's one. Second thing is, state laws could not be implemented in Punjab and elsewhere because our laws were based on the contract against the land leasing. So the farmer is not in a mood to and will never lease out its land. This is one thing has become clear. That's why the government of India, that's why I said the laws are well drafted. But then there is a catch there. And the farmers are not foolish. I guess they are better economists than you and me are. What they have, and this is their argument, which I have been dealing with them for the last 5 months now, since 5th of June. They say, okay, you have said land is not leased. But you have said if there is a dispute on recovery of the prices or remuneration or the dues of the crops, this can be recovered by either of the two parties as areas of land revenue. That means the matter goes under the Land Revenue Act, which is a state act, Punjab Land Revenue Act. In the Punjab Land Revenue Act, if a recovery suit comes, either filed by the buyer or the seller, now the assistant collector or the collector who deals with that recovery suit has a power to attach the land. Farmers are not foolish. They said, okay, you sent us to the collector, that's okay. Collector, we know Tahsildars, we know the deputy commissioners or the subdivisional magistrate or subdivisional officers, we know them all, it's okay. But then withdraw their powers to attach the land. Now, a big company like, let's say XYZ, a big company who's doing 10,000 acres or 20,000 acres of land, they have a dispute of 100 acres, they go to the Tahsildar or the district collector, file a suit for recovery. Now they will give enough, the whole battery of lawyers will appear, and then collector is duty bound to attach the land till the recoveries are made. Now that is the apprehension of the farmers, that these big buyers, big traders, big corporates will come in the market, assure us and sign contracts with us, then get their land attached. They will have a battery of lawyers who will keep on appearing before the Tahsildars. Where will the farmers get that money to pay the lawyers? Zameen bhi jayega aur rozgar bhi jayega. So these are apprehensions of the farmers. These are apprehensions of the farmers. But they are not really, they are asking to repeal that law, but they are not really disputing it also. Because choice is with them. I have told them, I said, your choice. Don't sign a contract. I'm not forcing you to sign a contract. Don't give it. If you think Reliance, they are stopping Reliance pumps and Reliance this and Reliance that in Punjab. Adanis have warehouses and silos in Moga in Punjab. They went and sat there. I said, if Adani comes to Punjab and they seek your land on contract, as crop on contract, not really, these are cropping contracts. Don't sign a contract. We are not forcing you. If they force you, then tell us. If you force and do anything, any coercive method, then there is always a law of the land to deal with that. So that is not a problem, but their apprehensions, somehow Government of India armed twist kind of took a circuitous route. Okay, no direct attachment of land, but through Land Revenue Act, but farmers could see through that message. And that's the understanding. We must appreciate that they may appear to be rustic, illiterate, small little fellows, but they know how the system works. And this argument came when a very, very, very rough Jagmohan from Patiala, one of those, what group is it? He was arguing it. I was surprised. I said, look, they could follow that law, link the central law with the state law and implication what a Tahsildar can do it. That is the understanding of Punjabi or for that matter farmers all over.
I mean,
they have that kind of understanding.
They have skin in the game.
Please.
I mean, they are much smarter than us for sure in this matter. So I think I'll pass on the floor now to Aditya. And these are really the kind of intricacies and insights that we were thinking of uncovering from this discussion. So Aditya, over to you.
Let me actually bring in a question that has already been asked and kind of maybe reframe it slightly to help you, answer maybe, your vision specifically for Punjab. So the question here states, what is your opinion of ENAM, the electronic the national agriculture market, and why substantial number of mandis were not impaneled in a matter of 4 years? Are the agricultural laws a newer advanced version of ENAM? This is the question that is asked by Zina Sachdev. But let me ask you, you've spoken about, what Punjab is doing in terms of the amendments that they're proposing. In addition to that, maybe for political reasons, something cannot happen. Are there other alternative ideas or other alternative policy suggestions that you might have to the center that you will say, okay, this is not working for the farmers in our states. Here are things that you can do. Can we, is ENAM the solution, or are there other ideas that are on the table from the policy makers' point of view that you can offer as, viable solutions instead of the current 3 farm bills?
Thank you, Aditya. Now, alternate solutions are there. It's not that I also wrote, I think, all is not lost with this farm legislations in Punjab. I keep repeating it in all my meetings and discussions with the officers in Government of India, my own colleagues here. Not everything is lost. Only thing is we need to engage with the farmers, get to know what are their intricate problems and what are their apprehensions, and try and resolve that. One major thing I have repeated it, I've said it when Sheikh was raising questions, is that when you are committed to procure food grains, say that the Government of India it said, if you read the language of the National Food Security Act, it says Government of India shall procure food grains for distribution through the public distribution system through the states and central agencies. Now this is it. I'm only saying add one word. Government of India shall procure food grains at specified price, and that assures them the MSP. So one issue of MSP is solved. The other major policy shift is that you need to, yesterday when we were in IIM Rohtak, I heard Dr. Gulati saying, he gave a whole host of reasons, saying that our limits for the central pool stocks is about 70 million. We have over 100 million tons. So we are surplus, we have wheat surplus, we have rice surplus, we are surplus in many things. Not a question. See, the question is when you had the shortages, you wanted the farmers to grow for you and you procured everything. Today, when you have become surplus, instead of finding way to deal with the surplus or allow trading in surplus somewhere else, you want to dump the farmers. Now, that's not a right public policy. Today, FCI is only buying and selling for public distribution system. What prevents the Government of India in allowing commercial trading also to the FCI? What prevents Government of India in allowing Food Corporation of India to export wheat and surplus wheat and paddy? There's nothing. Only thing is you have the FCI is a corporation under the Companies Act. You have to change the Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association. Parliament fully empowered. Government of India is fully empowered to make those changes. Okay, you want a dedicated corporation, food corporation, to deal with the poor, to provide for the poor, and you have the FCI for the PDS. Make another agri-food corporation for international market. And that food corporation in the surplus areas like Punjab, Haryana and Western UP, they should come up with their own quality specification, quality standards, and encourage the farmers to grow for the international market and procure it and sell it in the international market. You have to look after the farmers. You suddenly cannot say that, okay, I need 60 million tons, 70 million tons, I have 100 million tons, next year I'm not going to buy, farmers should fend for that. A small little 5 acres, 10 acres farmer cannot go to Dubai to sell, cannot go to Taiwan to sell, cannot reach out to the markets elsewhere in the world. They have to be facilitated, whether through the intermediaries or government agencies, they have to be facilitated to export their produce. And for that, either you allow the FCI for commercial operations, international commercial trading, or you set up an agri-foods corporation. Why not have an agri-foods corporation? Agri-foods export corporation. They should enter the market and protect the farmers. Somebody has to do this. Now, if you think this cannot be done, this should not be done in the global economy, all this global value chain, all these competitive market systems. Yes, if you think, then encourage some big corporates to set up agri-foods corporation, and those agri-foods corporations, private corporations, should buy it. If they're not buying it MSP, then the government should give price deficiency support for that. Bhavantar jisko bolte hain, Madhya Pradesh has done it, Haryana has done it. The price deficiency support, and it is recommended by no other than Dr. Ramesh Chand and the present Niti Aayog. We wanted price deficiency support for maize cultivation in Punjab. And they did not give it to Punjab, and they gave it to Bihar. And we wanted it for cotton. They did not do it for cotton in Punjab. They did it to West Bengal and other states. See, you can't have these distinguished discriminatory policies. And suddenly the whole, you see, this is it. As a civil servant, as a bureaucrat, I can concede. We are good to handle shortage economies and deficit economies. Now there is a surplus economy, food surplus economy. Now, in such a situation, we are now unable to find appropriate solutions to protect the poor and the small. And to protect the poor and small, we need to find our alternative marketing channels, and that should be supported, regulated by the government to see that the farmer's interest is protected. Farmer will keep on producing wheat and rice. You want 30 million, you take 30 million because that's the marketable surplus we have in Punjab. But you want 20, 10 has to go somewhere else. Then guide the farmers to sell that in some other market. But that market should assure the MSP. And if there is no MSP, then the Bhavantar has to come in. Or the deficiency support has to come in. And mind you, why deficiency support? Some of you feel another subsidy to the farmers. Now, as economists, you will understand. And the students of economics or public policy should understand. The subsidies, the farming subsidies, are these really for subsidies to the farmers? Some of you who've done some costing and a little bit of economic cost-benefit analysis should analyze the cost sheet of Agriculture Prices Commission, Cost and Prices Commission. Whatever goes to the farmer in the subsidized farm is not reimbursed to the farmer as by way of MSP. Farmer gets the MSP which is based on the actual cost incurred by the farmer. So there is no net benefit to the farmers because of the subsidy. Subsidy you give to the farmers or give cheaper credit, cheaper fertilizer, cheaper insecticide, cheaper agrochemicals, because as a country, as a national government, as a state government, we want to keep the prices of food as affordable prices. And that's actually a subsidy to the consumer. They are all consumer subsidies, they are not subsidies to the farmers. There will be subsidies to the farmers if you compensate them by way of prices and transfer the cost of their subsidies to the consumer. You're not transferring that. Of course, you are recovering through other taxes, the cross subsidizers, those are different things. The farmer, in terms of his net income, net remuneration, does not get any benefit of the subsidy. 7,000 crore we are paying for the free electricity to the farmers. Water is free. This is even not even counted as subsidy by the government of India. That's my worry. State is incurring 8,000 crores every year, which is a huge money for the state, which is about 10% of state budget. So what do we do? These are not actually, farmers are not benefiting. That's why people keep on asking us 200,000 of food subsidy, farm subsidies, but still farmers are indebted, farmers are still poor, because they are not getting adequate remuneration on their actual cost. Whatever is given by way of MSP or market price is based on their actual cost. That actual cost is calculated after deducting the subsidies. So the benefit of subsidy goes to the consumer buyers, it doesn't go to the producer. And that is done because it's not here, it's all over the world, because food prices have to be kept at the affordable level. So that is the problem. What was your other question, Aditya?
So the question was about, the reason why ENAM, yes, and why it has not improved so much, and whether you think, ENAM, like basically the farm bills are like the next.
Aditya, I don't know if you've been, if you've been chasing us and going through and pursuing whatever has been happening in Punjab, Haryana on this agitation. One of the demands of farmer is that amendments done by Punjab in the APMC Act in the year 2017 should also be withdrawn, should also be repealed. Now, what were these amendments? These amendments were to allow private market, to allow digital marketing, to facilitate access of producer with the distant market through the ENAM and NCDX and other things, create commodity exchange. So we, as a state, were one of the very few states with the consent and vetting of the laws by the Government of India, Ministry of Agriculture, had made changes in the APMC Act to facilitate alternative options, marketing options for the farmers. We have about 157 principal marketing yards. Out of them, 28 are the major markets. Major municipal towns market like Khanna, Patiala and Ludhiana and all. So in 28 markets, we started these operations. And not many of you would know, 1 million tons of rice, wheat and rice are bought by ITC. Over 2.5 million tons of wheat is exported through digital trading. Lots of chilies and other quinoas, seed potatoes are through the electronic connections and electronic connectivity or the eNAMs and other initiatives we've taken. The farmers are facilitated. But the process in agriculture, a change in agriculture is very slow. So is agriculture research. Those of you who are familiar with agriculture research, minimum after the research results come in agriculture, the minimum trials are 6 crops. It takes 6 to 7 years to develop a agriculture crop variety, and thereafter 3 years trial. It's only 9 years. It takes me 9 years to introduce a new crop in any market, in any agriculture operations, any setting in this country. So it's a slow process because food is like as important as anything else for the livelihood, and it's as important as the drugs and other things. So one has to be very, very careful. So it has been facilitated. In fact, farmers are agitating on that also against the state government, that the 2017 amendments, and these amendments, in one of the communication I can share with you all, Niti Aayog had appreciated that Punjab is one of the few states. We had finalized our rules. ITC has a private market. Pepsi has a private market approved, but there is a caveat there. The difference in 2017 and 2020, central legislations and the legislations as approved by Government of India and enacted by the state under the state powers, is that even the private markets are fully regulated. They have to comply with all that transaction recording system, the arrival, the dispatches, the stocking norms, the warehousing norms. Everything has to be complied. There is no. They also that 2.5% plus another 3%. All those local mandi taxes they have to pay. You see, this is a question. Those of you who have seen the WTO records and discussions, there also this has come. Globalization or market economy doesn't mean the state revenues have to be compromised. If you start compromising on the state revenues, in the first when the GST was enacted, 5% of purchase tax was withdrawn from Punjab. So 5% purchase tax means we lost about 5,000 crores. Then now you want another 6% to go with the new laws. That means another 4,800 crores goes. So where is the state going to raise money? The state's capacity to raise money, for development and for the common cause has to be maintained. And if global economy or market economy or open economy means that no revenues to the state, then there's, how do you govern? Then one can always say why there is a need to have government, why I need to be there, or why the chief ministers need to be there. You can have one window sitting in the Niti Aayog or somewhere in the Government of India, they can run all the states. If that is the way to run. But that will never happen. The country as big as this, India, as diverse, as complex, as difficult. You have not only the linguistic diversity, the kind of cost, social diversity. It's a huge issue it's a huge problem to run this country. I think people have to, whatever decision, whether it is eNAM, whether it is new legislation, whether contract forming, you cannot ignore social context in this country. Let's be clear. And one of the reasons there's the anguish in the farmers. Somewhere down the line, this uniform prescription in the shape of these three legislations has come in, but the contextual realities in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, which are different from Bihar, which are different from Telangana, have not been answered. And in one of my co-panelists in IIM Rohtak was Dr. Subramaniam Swamy. He's a Harvard professor. I am not a professor at all. I refuse to. But then he had to concede. Yes, the context of Punjab, Haryana, or context of Green Revolution per se, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi used to travel each district, she used to come every month to sit in Punjab. How can I cancel PL 480? Punjab, Haryana. That time Haryana was not there. She used to tell the then Chief Minister of Punjab, I have to cancel PL 480. I have to give a reply to US government. I need enough wheat and rice in the stocks. The country has to stand on its own. Now, that situation and today's situation, you just can't ignore the farmers. You just can't dump them to say, okay, now you fend for yourself. We have won the battle against America. We have self-sufficient. Now we don't need you. So you do what you want. That situation will not be accepted. That will cause much more social unrest than we have seen so far.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll urge the participants, in case you have any other questions, feel free to answer in the Q&A tab. Since we have a couple of minutes more, let me just ask another question, and this is, I think, linked to what you were talking about earlier, and I wanted to give you a chance to have a much more thorough discussion. I think the MSP point that you had raised earlier, and the recommendation of the Shanti Kumar Commission report on the on the restructuring of the FCI, somewhere that is kind of the elephant in the room, right? I mean, as you rightly pointed out, the farmers think it, that's clearly what is happening. Are there other creative solutions? Because you yourself have said that it is a bit true. Earlier, Punjab would not grow paddy rice as a monocropping. It was maize wheat. Then rice has come in. So it is the back-to-back cultivation of these water-intensive crops in places which do not have that much water, that is causing extraordinary cases of extreme salinity, groundwater depletion, over extraction, and it is not a sustainable way of agriculture. That is, I think, everybody would agree on that. The question is, if MSP has to go, in the sense that I'm asking you to put yourself in the center government shoes. You are now the secretary of thinking of all the states. Currently, procurement is only happening in few states, in the sense that these states account for bulk of the procurement, and it is lopsided, right? So why, if the government makes MSP for everyone, it's a legal mandate, and they start buying in Bihar, they start buying in Orissa, Jharkhand, where nothing is happening, we are going to have much more of the stocks, right? Like they're just going to go even much more than what is required. Somewhere down the line, even if MSP is mandated, Punjab, Haryana will have to reduce the area of cultivation under these crops so that other parts of the country can also benefit, right? Farmers in other parts of the country are also important. They also deserve the same benefits that farmers in Punjab have received. So if MSP has to go, are there alternative ideas like maybe supplementing it with a direct transfer to farmers? Are those viable options? Or are there other creative ideas, that can be done? Or is it the understanding that no, government of India, because we have said in FSA we have to procure mandatorily, then if it has to procure mandatorily, then every single farmer should be procured, right? Why is it the case that the credit of Punjab and Haryana, that they have built the infrastructure, they have built the things to benefit the farmers, but in other parts of the country, we haven't had the same infrastructure, correct? So if we start procuring everywhere else, where do we don't need that much rice and wheat. Even after COVID, we don't need that much kind of rice and wheat, right? As in, we need more nutrition, we need a better more not so water intensive crop. So there will have to be some reorganization of the country in terms of the cropping patterns, more suited towards the local needs. So again, I'm asking you not to put your Punjab hat on. Imagine you were, sitting in government thinking about other states as well. I know it's difficult to do it right now, but what would you say to something like that? Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. Let me begin with this. Why rice in Punjab? Why rice in Punjab? Punjab was neither a rice eating, it was neither a rice producing state. 85% what we produce here goes out. Whether it is basmati or other common paddy, common rice, it goes out. Because the country wanted it, because the national government had given us the target to produce rice. And why? There were three reasons. We had quality soil, we had quality water, and we had the hard-working farmers. The government of India at that time, with Mrs. Indira Gandhi and prior to that, realized that here is a state that can give us faster results. And we as Punjabi, I'm talking as a farmer, we as Punjabi farmers were compelled to grow rice. Over the 6 decades now, we have learned how to grow rice and we have mastered it. Now, why the same thing be allowed to others to grow? As simple as that. Why should Ganganagar? There's no procurement there. Rajasthan is not in a procurement rates are not allowed there. There's no government procurement in Ganganagar. There's no procurement in Hanumangarh. There's no procurement in Surtia. 57% of Punjab river water goes to that state for drinking purposes. They are using drinking water to grow rice. Why the government of India is not stopping them to grow rice? Why should Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh have, of late, they have kind of, I would say, I mean, it's not smuggling in that sense, but they have smuggled all the varieties of rice from Punjab, and they have started growing rice in Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. When these states, the new green revolution or the second green revolution which is happening in the central India or the northeast India, why can't they be convinced to grow something which is not grown in this country, or which is more needed? Oilseed, pulses, fruits, vegetables. They are as good as Punjab. If Chhattisgarh has water, they can do quinoa better, they can do citrus better, they can do many more vegetables and pulses and oilseeds better. We are shortage, we are net importing oilseeds. Why are they being allowed to grow same thing which is Punjab and Haryana and Western UP are already growing? So the policies, there is some drift somewhere, the policies are not right. You are creating an alternative for Punjab, where Punjab will also sink and they will also sink, because these 1 million farmers are not going to change overnight. There is a transition of this kind of a situation, and you're already allowing it to happen there. Just same cut and paste policies which you followed in 66 to say 85, 86 in Punjab, you're now giving the same policy package to Chhattisgarh and other states to do that. You are right when you say it's a water guzzling crop. Punjab is now deficit. But when we started rice cultivation, Aditya, only 96-97% of the Punjab land had subsoil water at a fairly good level. Only 3% area had, 3 or 4% area had water below 10 meters. Today my 97% area is below 10 meters. So we have reached that situation. This problem has come up. But because of that, I can't take away the livelihood of over 1.8 million farmers or 500,000 or about 2 million workers from eastern UP and Bihar or Orissa. So you have to, for states which are new to the green revolution, those who are just beginning to kind of develop their agriculture, they should be taught new way of doing things. Now you want us to get into the new things, demolish whatever we have achieved, and they are getting into what we've achieved in last 60 years. Now, this is probably not the correct way of doing it. Universal basic income, DBT are options. They are surely an option. If you want to cut on subsidies to the consumer, I don't call it farming subsidies, and you want to reduce, you don't want to enhance MSPs beyond a point, yes, you already started PM Kisan, 2,000 rupees per quarter goes to the farmers below 5 acres and all. That's all UBI because you're supplementing, giving direct support, yes. But MSP for food grains in the near foreseeable future, you cannot stop. Why? Because today we may say that we have brought down the poverty levels, we have brought down this level, that level. Still 40% people do not have enough to eat. If everybody had a universal level of income, they have good, nutritious, I'm not talking of the wholesome meal to fill in the tummy. If you want to give nutritious meal to everybody with adequate income, we need much more food grains and other foods than what we produce here. So MSP for the national food security, where quality food is available to everyone all time at affordable prices. If that is the meaning of food security, probably we have a long way to go. What we have today is, yes, nobody dies of hunger. Yes, we have achieved that level at a minimal level. You see, we always talk money. Why should a poor sitting in a remote village not eat as much as Suresh Kumar eats? Why should he not get fruits and vegetable, oil seeds, pulses, everything else in his meal? Why should he not get a balanced diet? Don't count कि दाल और चावल मिलेगा तो चलेगा ना. दाल चावल तो है, लेकिन nutritious diet नहीं है अभी. So nutritious balanced diet देने के लिए as part of your overall food security concept, probably the Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, the undeveloped areas of northeastern should have done something else, not repeat what Punjab and Haryana are doing. That's where the national policy is going wrong, and we will repent someday this. I have said it in Ministry of Agriculture many times when I was Agriculture Secretary. I still feel they are going wrong way.
Okay, thank you.
Aditya.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. Yeah, I think there are obviously. I think that's the point that there is definitely a political economy to this entire thing, right? The fact that you cannot switch farmers in Punjab to grow things that are maybe more suited there, right? So the flip question: why can't farmers in Punjab grow fruit and vegetables, and Chhattisgarh, Bihar, we do as in can do rice? Like whatever I will not decide. Like whatever the agrogeologists say is is most suitable for that region. That region should grow that crop, and they should presumably specialize in that. So, but there is a strong interest group that is also that has obviously developed in Punjab because of of these things. So I think it's obviously difficult to kind of take away benefits and then provide new benefits. But
Yeah, you can always say change is better, but change is resisted also.
Obviously.
And if the change brings it more prosperity than what we have achieved, yes, people will change. If you kind of through change you kind of induce poverty revisiting all those areas, I think there will be serious problem. There is going to be social turmoil. We've had one round of Naxalism before terrorism started in 78, and then terrorism. Every 30 years, in the last 60 years, every 3 decades we have a problem. And this now, if it is not resolved, I can tell you this is going to sow the seeds of another round of problems in Punjab. If radicals will take over and the farmers will have no say, the government of India, the state governments will lose control on the situation. This is not a good thing to do. You see, wherever the prosperity has been achieved, it's what kind of effort, whether it is policy initiatives, program initiative, investments, whether it is individual private entrepreneurs or farmers' efforts, those need to be kind of sustained and retained for future. Now, changes have to supplement and complement that effort. Changes cannot be by changing the whole base of it. That thing, I don't think that kind of a change is possible. Changes are possible, they will be gradual. Yes, we have changed quite a bit from the whole of paddy, whole of basmati trade is in private sector. 35 lakh tons of basmati is exported. And this year, as against the production of 35 lakh tons, we have orders of 70 lakhs. Because of new concept of food nationalism which the COVID has induced. After COVID, the more and more countries are importing foods now. We don't need to import because we have enough stocks. Our stocks will also be gone in 6 months. So there is a huge demand from the Gulf and the Europe for wheat and rice from Punjab and other places. So even basmati, the aroma rice they buy. The total trade, the basmati trading is doing well. It's been going on for 20 years now. The price is better than last year. Everything is happening. So you see, the question is, there can be a gradual change which gives you better income, better living, everything. But the states which are just coming up, they are just building their irrigation infrastructure and they are building in their agriculture infrastructure, market infrastructure. For us to reorient, change and redraft our infrastructure will be much more difficult than the new states. So it is easy for them. And we talked of the agroclimatic conditions. When we did this trade, one of the reasons you read the reports of pre-agriculture, there are reports of Government of India and Planning Commission that time. Even the Cambridge University, where I go for these agriculture issues, in the Tigris project they are doing, there it is very well written. Why Punjab was chosen? Because agroclimatically, this was the best region at that time to produce rice and wheat for the country. Yeah, so it was there. Now, if some things have fallen, now the solutions for those problems have to fall. Not that you just throw the baby with the basket and be done with it. That doesn't work. You today say, oh, Punjab farmers ki zarorat nahi hai, jao, tum hamari zarorat nahi hai. That won't work. The country will see another phase of social unrest and extremist violence and radicalism. That is avoidable.
I'll add a little bit of optimism. I'll just add a little bit of optimism there. Aditya, and this is at least... It has come out when I've been studying these issues. The government really wants to separate itself from any kind of infrastructure building. So, of course, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh are trying to do it. But to create that background, that entire infrastructure, it takes a lot of effort. So I don't think it's so easy to replicate what we have already in Punjab and Haryana, given that the government is trying to get away from all these issues. Okay, so I guess we are already about 20 minutes from what we expected, and a very nice discussion, great points, and We, of course, covered things very much in deep, a lot of these issues. So, Aditya, I leave it over to you to give the final concluding remarks and
No, absolutely.
thank Mr. Kumar. And
Yeah, no, thank you very much for extremely insightful. And what I liked about the discussion was it was the details, like the details that we miss out in some of the things because people talk in sweeping generalization and there is not enough context given. So the specific details are very, very important. The issues that you've raised are very, very key. I want to I'll probably leave it to as to Guru to give a vote of thanks. But before my final, I want to give you like a chance to close up because we've spoken about solutions, challenges, this that. I was looking at one of your older interviews in 2013, I believe, when you were at TERI. There was a talk at TERI, and you said one of the biggest challenges that we have is going to be climate change. I guess that's like a no-brainer for everybody now. But you said the structure of governance is not prepared for green growth in Punjab and elsewhere, in the country. What I want to ask you is, as we look ahead,
you picked up my Terry's speech.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
as we look ahead, in the 21st
Dr. Pachori's.
century. So as we look ahead into the 21st century and we think about climate change as being the number one defining challenge of our entire humanitarian existence, what in that respect, where do you think? Because I mean, agriculture, is one of the bigger contributors towards the change. So given that backdrop, what would you say are some of the unfulfilled challenges that remain, not for Punjab, like I think for India in general, and where should we be looking at? If you want to give some kind of closing remarks, or if you want to say, actually, the governance structure has actually improved for green growth, or are we still lagging behind in the same fashion that we were, 7 or 7? With that, I'll let you conclude.
I know these days internet creates a lot of problems. You keep saying it and everything goes on internet and somebody reads in some other context. Yes, that green growth initiative, the TERI 2013, I made Dr. Pachori's event. So I made that remarks. See, the thing is, again, I said it and I don't hesitate to repeat it. There is the need for change. And the change, if you're talking of climate change, at the same time, to kind of respond to climate change, we have to bring in climate resilient technologies and practices in agriculture. Government of India is not listening to that on us. There is a climate change center in PAU, Punjab Agriculture University. They keep sending a lot of requests. Take, for example, on water management, full cycle water management. We have all flood irrigation. We have very, very rudimentary way of irrigating our farms. Why not shift to drip and sprinkler irrigation? But that's very expensive. It requires huge of capex. Who has to give that capex? See, you must, this agriculture produces about 100,000 crores every year for Punjab economy. 1 lakh crore rupiya aata hai har saal, output value. In a sector which gives you 100,000 crore every year, your annual capital investment in this sector is less than 500 crore. Is that justified? Why is the Government of India? If Government of India is also thinking to change, conserve resources, conserve soil, water and other things, so why don't they look at better intelligent irrigation systems? There are many other climate resilient moisture monitoring, moisture monitors have come in. A lot of other things are happening. The Bolog Institute of South Asia in Ludhiana is doing it. So a lot of honeybee efforts are happening. But to upscale that, to apply it to whole of Punjab, to apply it small and big farmers, it requires a lot of incentives and a lot of capital investment. Those investments are not being thought. There is no investment in value addition. There is no investment in kind of streamlining, strengthening the value chains, supply value chains. No, the question is those things we are not talking. We just want to replace one system with another. Give whatever is happening, give it to the other states. Punjab should do something because Punjab is capable of doing it. But Punjab is capable, yes, but it will do only when you assure the income, assure the livelihood, which is level of living. Something which we have kind of, I don't know, you guys, you may not understand the Punjabi, maybe Shekhar does it. Something we've got to use to it. I can say it I do say it in Punjabi with the farmers. Something which we have got to use, that cannot be ended overnight. Those changes in terms of climate resilient practices, technologies, incentives to mitigate climate change effect, those initiatives are not coming. What is coming is to undo this, undo that, which will be resisted always. So you bring in those investment, make the system more resilient, make the system more strong to withstand the pressures of international markets and the global markets and private competition. Probably the change you wanted through the laws will also be achievable. So I'll stop at that. I think the laws are good. Farmers are anguished because their interests are they have not been consulted. One reason they are very, very kind of, if Hindi you understand, they are proud farmers. They don't compromise on anything. They need to be consulted and told this is what the way you should be doing. This is wrong. Probably a lot of goodwill we would have earned, but still not everything is lost. There are options available by specifying the prices, by giving them alternative options, working on deficiency price support, exploring new markets, exploring government intervention, retaining government intervention in agriculture markets to kind of stabilize prices to the benefit of the farmers, as well as kind of procuring, if so required, for international market for commercial trading other than PDS. So many other options are there, and those new upcoming states should look at the options and not repeat, even if it is a mistake. Let's assume it's a water guzzling crops we should not be doing. Even it is a mistake that was thrust upon Punjab and Haryana for the national interest, why should it be repeated elsewhere? Today we have the problem of nutrition security, compromises on biodiversity, crop diversity. This will happen 30 years, 40 years from now. It will happen in Madhya Pradesh also. It will happen if you introduce MSP there. It will happen in those states. So at least the states which have potential to start fresh, which are beginning afresh, and they can begin with the new ideas, new technologies, new way of doing business, at least let them grow in a different way, and then gradually we can induct more capital, more investments in Punjab to change things here also. So the country as a whole we will change. I think changing the system and just saying this is not right, this is what is right. No, your old system, we don't like it because we don't need you. That may not work. That's not a good policy. This policy drift, which is not the policy which is not fully reflecting on the contextual realities, which is not allowing the states to make local adjustment, that drift is not in the interest of the country, not in the interest of the economy. I would say the government of India will someday they will realize and think of some better options.
On that very positive note of change eventually taking place, and the fact that in a country as diverse as India, making policies has to keep many things in mind, but definitely one thing that got highlighted in today's dialogue is the social context. I think is important. I want to thank you, sir, for very much for taking time out to be here. I think this was a wonderful masterclass, not so much a dialogue on not just food and agriculture issues, but also about.
I thought youngsters will say something.
They will, after we finish the webinar, they will spend a few minutes with you. But I think the fact is that you've been able to create this, give a very small insight into a very large sort of process that goes behind all these things. Shekhar, Aditya, I want to thank you both very much for getting the best out of Mr. Suresh Kumar, because a speaker is only as good as the moderator and the questioner, persons in this case who pose questions. And on behalf of all of us, thank you both very much for your support, and look forward to continued support on this. So thank you very much to all our audience. Thank you very much. We'll be back with more such dialogues, and stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.